Back at the Crappie Pond, and it was cold last night. See, we got some snow on the banks. There's actually a pretty thin layer of ice over most of the pond. Looks to be some open water ahead of me, but I am out here today just kind of obviously to catch fish, but to kind of play around with a new line. I'll show you. It is the Tenkara Rodco crossbreed line. It's PVC fly line with 2 feet of furled leader on the end of it. So it's, a hybrid line. So we'll see how it goes. I'm gonna get out here and do some casting, and I'll check back with you in a few. So with this line being PVC, I do highly recommend you pre-stretch it. So you just kind of run it through your fingers and stretch it out. The PVC fly line does have a pretty significant amount of memory to it. So when you unfurl it from whatever you hold your line on, it's going to be, it's going to hold a little bit of that shape. So if you use a rod spool, it's going to be kind of curly-cued. If you use, like I do, I use gear ties. It has kind of these kinks in it. So all you have to do is just run it through your hands and kind of just stretch it a little bit. And then it gets it lays itself out pretty nicely. I mean, the line casts great. I love casting PVC fly lines on a Tenkara rod. For me, the question is how durable it is. I fish around a lot of structure, a lot of tight spots, so it's how long does it last. But yeah, we'll keep fishing around here and see if I can't come up with a fish. Switching up to this kind of neutrally buoyant bugger pattern. It's basically just a woolly bugger with a couple lead eyes tied onto it, or not lead eyes, with chain bead eyes tied onto it. It sinks pretty slow. I'd say probably an inch every 5 seconds. Just gives the fish a chance to look at it when they're sluggish like this. But yeah, give that a couple casts and see how we do. Well, the streamer worked. Just really slow retrieve, and yeah, this little crappie picked it up. Hooked him right in the corner of the mouth like I'm supposed to. Get him unpinned and put him back. Spot number 2, weather's warming up a little bit. It's like 35 degrees as opposed to the 28 or 29 when I started. I'm gonna fish. I think you can see behind me there's kind of a series of points there. I'm gonna fish those points real quick, see if I can't get a bass, and then I'm gonna switch spots. Check back with you in a few. I've got the same fly that I've been running, but I switched over to that I got that crappie on. Just a woolly bugger with some chain bead eyes on it. Cool. Last spot was a bust. I'm back at the perch pond, same fly. Really like to break this perch pond skunk. I have been just getting beaten up every time I come here, so hopefully I've got a fly on that they'll eat. Hopefully they're eating. Well, I'm back at my crappie pond. I bounced around to a couple different spots, nothing to show for it. Air temperature is up. Started out at started at 28 degrees, and now we're at 41. So I imagine fish are going to be a little bit more active. So let's see. Still really liking this line. It casts great. I have had to stretch it, pre-stretch it just about every time I've unfurled it. I've done that a bunch today, so it is getting less kinked every time. It's showing less memory, so like regular fly line, I'm sure once it stretches out, it'll be good. Back to my indicator rig, just bouncing it along. Just have that one crappie today, so that's kind of a bummer so far. So I walked to the other end, across the bridge. There's a little deep spot right by that little birdhouse. I've got about 50 yards of water that I'll fish here. And I've caught a couple decent bass sitting here. It's really shallow by the bridge. And then about right where I'm standing, it starts to deepen up a little bit. So the fish will stage kind of right where it gets deep, so as stuff rolls over, they can ambush it from below. This time of year it's tough because a lot of times, you know, the fish eat so lazily that it's real easy to confuse a snag with an eat. So I'll sit into a whole lot of snags, that's for sure. That first one was an eat for sure, but that's a little bit of a nibble. You can tell it kind of goes down and pops up real quick. Bluegill for sure. So basically, as I fish this water, I kind of treat it like a trout stream. Whichever way the wind or current is going, I just start at the bottom and I move upwind from there, or up current from there. It's like pecking at it. Just pecking at it, pecking at it. Try to set. This is a zone where I catch a lot of bluegill, so sometimes crappie, but most of the time bluegill. You can tell by the way they eat. And what you're doing with the fly when they eat too. Bluegill, they like a little bit of motion. Crappie less so. They do like it, but not as much. Bluegill, they want you to twitch it and do all sorts of stuff. They like to chase it. Even when it's cold, they'll chase. Crappie and bass, not so much. At least I'm getting takes. There we go. A decent sized one too, man. The bluegill in here are huge, like relatively speaking. Here, let me pause the camera and I'll get this guy unstuck. Well, there he be. Pretty little fish. Tail's a little bloody. Colors on it are just crazy. Thanks. See you later, bud. Whoop, off you go. Well, you know, you see the way I fish this Tenkara, and it's definitely not the way traditional Tenkara is fished. But I'm also not targeting traditional Tenkara species. You know, I run an indicator, I use a worm, I run a streamer. You know, I've got the rod tip relatively low, a bunch of line on the water sometimes, not others. There we go. What do we got? It looks like a crappie. It is. Cool. Super colored up little crappie. Ate the worm. I know I sound like a broken record with this fly, but it, you know, when it stops working, I'll stop fishing it. You know. Let's get you back in the water, bud. So back to what I was saying about traditional Tenkara versus how I'm fishing it, which I affectionately call American Tenkara. Basically, a hybrid between Western fly fishing and Tenkara fishing. lot of the Western flies. I even use Western fly line. I'm using a hybrid line that has Western fly line on it right now. However, I use a lot of the same techniques. A lot of the same techniques that traditional Tenkara fishers use. So, pulsing the rod, which is kind of what I'm doing right now. Dead drifts, which is a Western technique as well, dead drift. And I will hold the line off the water occasionally if it suits my purpose. But man, when you're fishing this stuff in these lines in high wind, you really need to keep the rod tip low. Like right now, the wind's kicked up a little bit. If I have the rod tip high, it catches the wind and it acts like a sail. In order to have the, my indicator or my fly moving naturally with the current, I need to keep my rod tip low. And that's a Western technique. I didn't make it up. I mean, I love with these AirLock indicators. They are amazing. They have kind of a little screw top on them. Makes it super easy to adjust your depth. They're biodegradable. They're just awesome. And they float like this little guy right here. I mean, it's the size of my thumbnail. Will float like a 3.8 tungsten beadhead fly, which is, pretty heavy. So yeah, it's the only ones I run. I highly recommend that you run these indicators. They're awesome. Gonna switch things up a little bit and go with this bead-headed zonker. It's basically a small bait fish imitation. And see if I can't get a bass to pick it up. And just like that, as I was working my way back to the car, picked up this little guy. He ate that little zonker fly. Decent, not huge, but definitely decent. So my rod is 12 inches long. So this is my rod handle is 12 inches long. It's about a 13-inch fish. So nothing crazy. Probably about a pound. Let's get him unbuttoned and put him. Just got back in the water and he gets stuck on this stupid netting that they put in there to hold the grass on these ponds, which is ridiculous. So I had to reach in there and grab him. Now let's get him back. Give him a little shove that way. Off you go, bud. It's crazy, this little bluegill ate that zonker. That thing is, it's big enough for him to eat, obviously, because he ate it, but that's a new one. I haven't had him take those little streamers yet, but that's fun. Cool, just gonna get him back.